All right. How many of you are currently investing in real estate and struggling to meet your monthly cash flow? Is anyone here maybe have a negative cash flow property? If so, this call is for you. Your cash flow is really where your real freedom is going to begin as a real estate investor. And for those that you don't know, my name's Zach Cahill. And today we're going to be talking about why cash flow is king and how to optimize it for financial freedom. Before we jump into it, I just wanted to say I am grateful for you guys jumping on the live stream and for those in attendance who are going to be watching the recording. So please come on camera if you do have one, and we're going to jump right into it. So thank you for your time, your energy, and being here tonight. What I'm going to share with you guys are going to be very simple. We're going to go over the three drivers that I've been using in my real estate portfolio to achieve financial freedom. I'm going to also share with you guys an exercise, a simple exercise that you guys can do to really measure your financial freedom number and create an action plan to get there. Good to see you, Mike. Good to see you, Bruce, on the call. Brian. So I started my journey back in 2017. At the time, I had one property. I didn't really have a financial freedom number, and just really implementing these drivers that I'm going to share with you today allowed me to create and replace my full 9 to 5 income and quit my job in 2022 as a full-time paramedic, replacing it with 100% of my real estate income. So, Roy, good to see you again. Caroline, looks like I just let you in. Great to see you. I'm going to go ahead, share my screen, and we're going to get into it. This is going to be a shorter session than usual. This is the fifth webinar that we've done in the iOS series, and we are going to get right into it. So I'm going to share my screen now. Just give me a thumbs up, guys, if you can see it. Should be going 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Brian. So as I said, this event is all about optimizing cash flow and really to obtain that financial freedom goal. Okay, so before we get into it, as you guys already know, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a financial advisor. What we're going through today is strictly for educational purposes only. And I've talked a lot about myself. Like I said before, I've been investing in 2017, and I've been using this iOS framework that I'm sharing with you guys today, and really been here to share with you guys so you guys can implement it in your own portfolios as real estate investors. Okay. So, I know I've talked a little bit about this every time, but this summer I was really trying to figure out, how could I offer the most value as possible to, not only my fellow investors, but other investors who are looking to grow their real estate portfolios. And I came up with the iOS framework, which stands for the Internal Operating System. As an investor, there is just so many different pieces to running a successful business, and having this framework will allow you guys to implement it. And really at the center of the framework, in my opinion, it's all about, whether you're an active investor, whether you're a passive investor, it's really all about this term right here. It's all about creating generational wealth, and also being able to do it from a place that's hands off, right? Like, even for the active investors on the call, I'm sure you would agree that it would be best nicer if you can do this in a more streamlined way, right? And that's what this is all about. So when I kind of took some time away this past summer, I really realized the hands-off generational wealth, specifically multifamily investing, that's in the center of all of this, all these calls that we're doing. And around it, maybe just asking the chat here is like, what is like lifestyle freedom mean to you guys? What does high investor confidence mean to you guys? What does long-term intergenerational wealth mean to you guys? Because in order to have this hands-off generational wealth, you need all of this, right? You need a business that can offer the lifestyle freedom, whether that's your own business or through investments. Okay. You need a plan to, pass this wealth down to kids or family members, right? Or to your church or to whoever. You need that exit plan eventually. And you need to be doing it in a way that has very high investor confidence. Okay. There's nothing worse doing all this work and then being kept up at night because you're worried if your tenants are going to pay, or maybe your investment's not going to be paying. So it needs to have all of those emotions of, the freedom, the intergenerational wealth, and ultimately the high confidence. So that's why I identified earlier this summer. And then it doesn't stop there, because with each of these larger circles here, I like to call them our drivers, is in order to have, the lifestyle freedom, the high investor confidence, you need to know how to acquire real estate, right? You need to know like where to buy it. For instance, like we went over market selection, how to identify key real estate markets and where you should be putting your money. We also went over how to generate leads in these markets. Mike, I think that would be a good one for yourself to, learning how to generate leads. It's a key component. There's many ways to generate leads, but it's about mastering the few. So there's already an event on that. And lastly, a few weeks ago, we did one on deal underwriting. So again, a great one to kind of go back and watch to really understand. I think, Roy, you were just mentioning you were checking that one out. So to know like the ins and outs and how we're underwriting deals, the difference between CMHC, conventional, and all that stuff. And tonight, we're going to be specifically talking about our major third driver, which is how to optimize for financial freedom. So this one is going to be a short one because it's going to give us a brief introduction to the gap. It's going to give us a brief introduction to cash flow maximization in general, and a brief introduction to renovations. Sorry, guys, I don't know what's going on with my pen there, but another brief introduction to the renovations and proactive maintenance. Okay, there will be future sessions that will dive in further on the gap, on the cash flow, on renovations and maintenance. But for this one, we're going to keep it high level. And then later in the show, going into the new year, we'll be covering the third driver, which is how to operate with excellence, where we get into like investor reporting and business systems and optimization and that sort of stuff. So glad you guys are on the call. Again, if you have questions that I'm going through this, feel free to put them in the chat box. We can keep this engagement. I find we can learn better that way. But ultimately, like right now, like does everyone on the call know what their financial freedom number is? Like what is the ultimate goal that everyone on the call is hoping to achieve in real estate? Does everyone have that? Maybe drop it in the chat box if you do. Because as I share with you these slides, in order to obtain our lifestyle freedom, it's going to be a mix between, how much cash flow we have and how much time we have available is going to determine our level of freedom. Okay. And the first major accelerator that we're covering today is this gap right here. Okay. I saw one answer in the chat box. I love it. Great share. So the first is the gap. And I think this is where a lot of investors, honestly, like I've been to many, many seminars for investors, and, I think just calling a spade, if you guys know me, I'm kind of very blunt, is, there's a lot of people out there just saying, okay, pick this outrageous goal that you have for cash flow. Okay. And then like triple it or quadruple it or make it larger. And you have this huge goal that's and you have no idea how you're going to attain it. Okay. And I remember being going on a few of these real estate conferences, and I think my goal was to have like billions of dollars under management, be transparent with you guys, and just no idea how to achieve it. So in the gap, guys, we really need to understand like what that financial freedom number is. So maybe I'll just zoom in for a little bit right here. Okay. So what is that financial freedom number? Okay. That's really like kind of the first thing. And when we get into this specific accelerator on actually be the next event we do, I'll give you guys some more exercises on how to determine what that number should actually be. Okay. But once we have that number, we got to figure out where are we today? Okay. So we know in the future we want the 5K a month, the 10K a month, the 15K a month, the 20K a month, but where are we today? Okay. And the gap is very simple. The gap is what's in between. Okay. This is the gap. Sorry if you guys can't see that right. So basically, if we do have a goal of 10K a month or 15K a month, what is the gap? What's the bridge that we need to cross? Does this make sense, guys? It's really not rocket science, and I'm sure you might have seen a variation of this in the past. Okay. But it's not like the next step from here is figuring out what resources do you have to bridge the gap. And this is where, myself included, have made mistakes in the past because I'm setting, at the beginning, I think I had a financial freedom goal of about $5,000 a month. And when I was starting, I had zero cash flow. So my gap was 5,000 a month. Okay. That was my goal for having that in reoccurring revenue. And then I did a resource audit. So resource meaning like, what cash do you have in the bank, right? You have RSPs. Are you currently working? Another great resource would even be time. Like how much time do you have to invest in your real estate business? Okay. And for me, I had a gap of $5,000 a month and I had $50,000. Okay. Does anyone see a problem in this? How am I going to invest that 50,000 to make 5K a month? Right. It's actually, I don't want to say impossible, but very, very challenging to do. So I had to use other resources like my own time and sweat equity to forge that and achieve that $5,000 a month. Okay. So depending on where you are at in your journey, you might have a ton of time to invest to achieve that gap, or you may not. And it's important to realize that at the beginning before even starting this. Like really, this might even should have just been like the first webinar ever shared on this series. But even before, again, jumping into buying properties, you got to know what your gap is, and it has to be realistic because there's too many investors that I personally talk to, even myself, that have a goal of 10K a month and they have $100,000 and they have no time. And really, like you're just not gonna get there. I know, maybe other people disagree and they just want you to set a massive goal and pay for coaching and go to these events. But I'm definitely realistic, and I want to set a realistic financial freedom goal that you can achieve and then get confidence behind it and then increase it versus setting some arbitrary number that you're really just never going to hit and be working towards it forever. And you're never really going to get the satisfaction of success. And it's very hard to stay motivated if that goal is so lofty and you don't really have the steps. Does that make sense, guys? So on the next call we'll be on the gap, and I'm going to go through more of how to determine like what questions should you be asking yourself to determine the financial freedom number. I might even bring one of our partners on the call as well, who can help you guys do like a resource audit to understand like what resources you have available to achieve that. But just for now, just start like thinking about this, right? And I know this is going online here, and thanks for the share there, Michael. Great share. So, Michael, if you don't mind, I'll just share like, so like, 30K a month is the goal. Year one, 10K a month. But how do we bring that back into even having like, micro steps? Like, what is the gap right now and how to achieve that, right? Like, so versus starting with, let's say 10K a month or 20K a month, 30K a month, how do I get $500 a month? Right? How do I get an extra $500 a month in the next 6 months and then achieve it, right? And then another $500, another $500. Almost like you're having like these micro goals that you can really like reflect on every few months and, test and measure to achieve it, right? This is just one strategy that has worked for me. I know other people that do like to set the massive goals, and they've had success with it. So again, this has just worked for me. This has worked for my investors in the iOS system. But yeah, keep up the shares, guys, and hopefully you're getting some value here. Okay, the next accelerator, and we're going to talk a little bit about cash flow maximization. And when I say cash flow maximization, what kind of comes to mind, guys? Like, how do you think you could really maximize cash flow in a real estate investment? And you can feel free to drop those answers in the chat box. Okay. So I know I'm skipping over lots of slides here, but just one more thing is, this is where most investors are at right now. Okay. They don't know their financial freedom number. Okay. They're relying too much on appreciation, and their properties are not maximized or optimized for financial freedom. So I see some good answers. So good rental income, minimizing expenses, Airbnb with managers. Dwayne said the Burr, which were all great. Um, I'll guys give you a like. I think ultimately my number one way of really optimizing monthly cash flow, and I have a checklist here. It's kind of small, but it's actually been in the vacancy category. Okay. Really focusing on minimizing vacancies on the properties that I have. I think at the one of my kind of my like shifts in my brain over the last few years was like at the beginning I was trying to just get the most rent out of tenants. Like I was renting like the highest possible rent. And then what was happening is those tenants were leaving, right? Like after a year, they were leaving, or a year and a half, they were leaving. And then you'd have to go in there and paint the unit and turn it over. So for myself, I've had a lot of success with actually renting it a little bit below market rent and having a little bit like of a more proactive approach to property management so that your tenants will stay there. Because by far, the most expenses that a landlord is going to have is going to be tenant turnover. And I can tell you this because when you're underwriting a deal, most investors are using like, let's say a 5% vacancy rate or like a 3% vacancy rate. But if you have one tenant that moves out and it stays vacant for a month, there goes your entire vacancy rate. So tenants are going to move out. That's just going to be a normal, evolution of life, but really focusing on limiting that and having a proactive approach to management, knowing all of your tenants' names, knowing their when they like to pay rent, how they like to pay rent, having a simple way where they can communicate with you, whether it's for maintenance or just a general question, are all things that it's going to make them feel important. I know someone also I think mentioned like the BRRRR strategy. So again, whenever we're working with BRRRRs, typically we're buying properties that have under market rents. Um, and we're working on like, whether turning those units over when we get vacancies or just simply keeping those tenants happy. And I'll share another actually story about the vacancies is my first property ever in 2017 that I bought was a 6 unit. Every single tenant was low rent, okay? Most of them paying like direct deposit through government service. And I went in there and I added a seventh unit. I only renovated a seventh unit. Okay. I got a new tenant in at market rent. I then refinanced it and kept it. And that was in 2017 that project was purchased. So what's that? Eight years ago. Okay. In 8 years, I've only ever had one of those tenants turn over. So the original six, only one is turned over. Okay. And I've never had a vacant, I had never had one missed rent payment a month. 0% vacancy. 0%. Okay. In 8 years. So imagine you when you're running your numbers and you look at, that 5% vacancy that you're budgeting year over year, and then like look at that annual number and then multiply it by 8. And that's how much more cash flow I had just by keeping the tenants happy. Even though they were paying, a lower rent, it was still cash flowing significantly. All right. And I have another kind of interesting story, and I might get the numbers wrong here. But when I was running I don't even need my screen share there. When I was running a real estate event in Sudbury back in 2018, we would do these events monthly, and we would host them at one of the panoramic properties buildings in Sudbury. And if you don't know panoramic properties, it's like pretty well the largest landlord in Sudbury. They own 12,000 units, okay, today. In 2018, I think it was less, obviously, but they're a big deal. And we were running the meetup out of one of the basement units on Panoramic Properties, okay? And the owner of Panoramic Properties actually came to the real estate meetup. Like even though the meetup only had like 15 people, I think it was probably like the highlight of my year that year. And we were asking him questions. It was like the time to ask this guy that has like 10,000 units in Sudbury, like anything you want, okay? And we're like, okay, like how do you do this? Like how do you run this operation? And also he started his business when he was in his 50s. Okay? Not when he was young. He was like literally in his 50s when he started the business. And we got talking about vacancy. And his vacancy rate across his entire portfolio, guys, was under 0.5%. Okay, figure that out. So just insane. Like, and if you want to roughly do some research on panoramic properties, they're more like a luxury style apartment, like renting bachelor apartments for $2,500 a month. Okay, in Sudbury, and for fun, do 12,000 times $2,500 a month. Okay. And that's his monthly rent roll. Imagine he went from a 0.5 vacancy rate percentage to a 5%. You're talking like probably like $1 million, millions of dollars. Okay. So that for me is probably like the most value I could really give you guys in terms of like how to implement this strategy in the next 30 days. If you already have rentals and you're posting things for lease, don't just increase the rent at market. Pull it back maybe $100 or $150 a month. Give some other bonuses there to really try to find a great tenant who's going to stay at your property for the next 3, 4, 5 years, and it'll be a good tenant. You won't really have to think about it. Um, yes, Carolyn asked, did I raise the rents every single year for those lower income properties? And yes, I did. Like when I took it over, we're talking like $700 for a two-bedroom unit, all inclusive. Since then, it's like probably low 800s. Like it hasn't really increased a lot, but again, there's been very, very little maintenance and there's been absolutely no vacancy. And I think I've talked about that deal before. And yeah, I just already got my capital back out from doing the refinance. So I'm just, letting it ride and keeping it. And eventually those tenants will turn over. So, some other things on the checklist is like pretty much all of these are really talking about, ways to increase the net operating income, whether that be from, adding laundry, looking at paid parking, utilities. Um, there's all of these other ways to look at increasing net operating income. If you're understanding like the multifamily investment, that is the goal. It's to buy something and then increase the income. I know I just kind of backpedaled and said, really, really look at what your rents are. Every single property manager that I really do value and they've been successful are really strategically pricing their rents. And I've done both extremes. I've had overpriced rents, which were still getting tenants, and it was a headache. They were moving out after 6 months, and it cost me tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars because of the turnovers. Okay, so be very strategic in those rents. Some other things, and just kind of if you have some properties, you could probably put them in one of these quadrants. What I'm really looking to achieve is this quadrant. I want to have high income cash flow with low stress. Okay, so this is kind of why I've chosen the market like Sudbury and also specifically like a C plus B minus area because I'm still able to achieve the high cash flow with the high cap like the higher cap rates and somewhat achieve the lower stress. I don't think it's low, but it's less stress because I have the good solid tenant base. Okay. Now, in this quadrant here, there's strategies that have high cash flow and they're high stress, like working with like, you know, just like I don't know, I've heard things about like student housing or just room rentals and getting really involved. We do have some of those types of properties of ours in Sudbury, but it's understand like to figure out which quadrant where you kind of feel like fit into. You know, quadrant like low having low stress and low cash flow would probably be like you bought like a new development or a purpose built property that you paid top dollar for, but there's also no stress. So you're kind of you're kind of like trading those out, right? And then the last quadrant, like that's you just bought a bad property, no cash flow and high stress. Like you probably just want to get out of that deal. So yeah, just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at your own real estate portfolio and which category of this would you really want to fall under. Um, I mean, just go, we'll skip past this. So this is the last piece before we wrap up today. And again, if you guys have questions as we're going through this, and I mentioned it before about the tenant management, but it's really just kind of reframing the problem and focusing on how to be a proactive in the maintenance. And obviously, this was a unit that we've turned over. Um, and one of my, yeah, like I mean, is everyone on the call right now like a homeowner, or is anyone renting right now? Just out of curiosity. Because when we're in this business, I think one of the biggest challenges is like most real estate investors are homeowners. Like we're not renting. And we kind of forget what it feels like. Michael said both. I love it. We kind of forget what it feels like to be a tenant, right? I'm sure everyone on the call has probably rented one time in their life, maybe a while ago. And really how you really nail this is just you really got to put your shoes in like in the tenant's shoes and you know really like kind of humanize them like they're our customers, right? If this was any other business, okay, we would be like getting testimonials from them, we would be like on them, but like the LTB, the media has kind of pivoted like landlords and tenants like almost like against each other, right? Like look at all the fines that landlords can get, all the crap that goes on in the LTB. So you kind of have to just like leave that at the door when you're thinking about this proactive maintenance and the proactive management, and really put yourselves in the tenant's shoes, and how can you really be like a really good rental housing provider. Okay. And don't like even just get the word landlord out of the dictionary, because even that word is like it's so ancient, right? That word alone just pits tenants against landlords. Like, what are you, a lord of the lands? Like, really, what we're looking to do is provide a safe place, a clean place for tenants to live. And we're rental housing providers and focusing on that excellence so that if they have an issue, there's a number to call. If there's an emergency, there's a number to call. You're going to be checking in with them. Like and it took me years to get this right, guys. Like you wouldn't believe how many tenants I've had that have literally just like moved out after a year on their lease because they thought they had to move out. Like they just moved out, right? So just kind of treating this more as like a two-way communication with your tenants and making them feel good about the property. And you're going to really attract the right tenant. You're going to be able to be proactive with the maintenance, um, in terms of property inspections and things like that. And even another example, like again, guys, I'm not perfect. I've made a ton of mistakes, and we have a rental in Sudbury right now that we've had it for a couple years now. And we've been doing our inspections on the properties, every couple times a year, and we got a call from a tenant, and she was like, "Yeah, my there's water in my bathroom." And then we went there, um, and this was not a tenant that our company had placed. She's been there for about a couple of years, and we went there, and like there's mold everywhere in her bathroom. We're like, "Well, what's going on? Like, what happened?" And she's like, "Oh, it's been going on for like 2 months." Okay. And now we have to spend like 60 to $70,000 in redoing the entire department and waterproofing it. And it's not an insurance claim because it was a gradual leak. Um, if we had a better relationship with that tenant and we're in more communication, we would have saved 70 grand. Okay. That's like a real life example that happened like last month. So I can't really stress enough on just, especially if you're a smaller portfolio right now, like, shoot your tenants a text message and be like, hey, how's everything going? Right? Any concerns? And especially in a market right now where the vacancy rates are climbing, there's a lot of options for tenants to go. We got to think of ways that how we can keep those tenants. Yeah, and I love it. Rental housing provider. That's what we should be calling ourselves, right? Um, so yeah, as we wrap up here, guys, I hope you guys are getting some value, or at least something that you could be implementing in the next, 30 days. Like there's just so much information online, and being able to get some from a call like this and implement it is why we're doing it. Um, all of these accelerators are going to work together, right? We have the gap that we just spoke about. We have strategies that will help you maximize the cash flow of the properties that you have. And then it's all about maintaining that, right? You can't just like let it go by the wayside. You need the maintaining with checking with the tenants, seeing how things are going. And it really kind of has this flywheel effect. Carolyn, I'm supposed to protect the property every 3 months. Like it honestly really depends. Yeah, if we would have checked the property every 3 months on this specific issue, it still would have happened because it happened within a month. But typically, we're expecting properties about twice a year, typically. So that would probably be, if you're doing once a year, that's probably like the bare bones minimum. But usually we're doing kind of like a winterizing inspection, making sure everything's turned off outside and type of things, and then one in the spring. Yeah. And like simple reminders to get tenants to change the filters. That's, a perfect example why we kind of do it just before the winter to address, yeah, to address ones like that. Okay. So really the summary here, guys, is like by far cash flow is king, especially in a market like, I mean, I think it's always been king. Even when the markets are going to the moon and they're appreciating, we all know the market cycles, they're up, they're down, they're going sideways, and you got to rely on cash flow. The last call we did was specifically on deal underwriting, where we looked at, okay, cash on cash returns and how to maintain that on all the projects that you guys are doing. The next call we have, again, I'm going to wrap you up here in a minute just because this was a shorter event, just to briefly touch on the three drivers. The next event we're doing is on the 27th of November at 5:30. That's Eastern time. And this is going to all be about the gap to financial freedom. So really how to put an action plan together to achieve that gap. Okay, so whether your goal is an extra $500 a month or $10,000 a month or $15,000 a month, let's figure out a plan on how you can achieve it. And let's come in there basically, and I would say if you're going to join that call, let's actually be like realistic on achieving the goal in terms of what capital is available, how much time do you have available to put into it, and what's the time horizon? Are you looking to do this in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, and really make a plan? And if you guys do need help with a, financial like review, I do have basically a certified accountant and mortgage broker who's helped me do this analysis on investors before. So I'm not sure if they'll be on the call, but after that will be kind of the giveaway for you guys where you can have someone, give you a second opinion. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll send you this replay after this call here. So, any questions, you can go ahead and leave them in the chat box or even unmute yourself right now. But one of the things I'll leave with you guys is it's not always about like owning more properties. It's about optimizing the ones that you have currently. And this is where, again, I made mistakes for just keep focusing on the next deal. A lot of people say I want 5K a month, I'm going to need 50 doors or something like that. But realistically, there are ways to achieve that with much less headaches and just doing it strategically. So I'll stop the recording now, and appreciate you guys joining. And yeah, any questions, you guys can hang on and happy to help.